It's Sunday. Time for another therapy session. My mom has cancer. Jesus has the answer. It's still so hard for me to say that. It is still so hard for me to say that Jesus has the answer. I do believe that. But I don't know if I believe it. I don't know. I do believe it. I don't know if I trust it. So yesterday, which was February 13th, today is February 14th, Valentine's Day. Yesterday, on the 13th, is an anniversary of mine with my husband. We met on the internet, and it's the anniversary of the day that we finally met in person and really decided that this was what we wanted to do, get married and such. And we had a day planned. We were going to go with some friends. We were going to drive down toward New York City and spend the day with some friends and their kids. We've had this plan. My husband has been trying to plan this for a long time. It was supposed to be a surprise, but he ended up telling me. And then my mom called. My mom has not really let me in the way that I was hoping that she would. I don't know what I was hoping for, but I think it was, we talk on the phone and stuff, but I guess I pictured myself helping her clean up vomit after her chemo. I don't know. Taking her to the grocery store or getting her groceries for her, making her meals. And I did that in the beginning, but she's kind of holed up in her house with my dad. So yesterday she called and she said, hey, clumps in my hair are finally falling out. She said it's a lot. She said I woke up and she said it was like a scarf of hair on my neck in my bed. She said then I sat down at the table and my hair fell out around me onto my food. And I was like, okay. And she said, she just cried actually. And she cried not about her hair, but she cried about her nausea, which has been pretty bad. And, you just know nausea, when you are nauseated, you just don't want to do anything. You just want to lay around. You just want to be still. She's not vomiting, but the nausea has been pretty bad. So I said, Mom, why don't you take your nausea medication? She's like, no, I think I can do it. She's trying to muscle through it. Plus the nausea medication has side effects. So now the side effects my mom is experiencing are she has chemo sores on her leg. She has chemo sores in her mouth. Her hair is falling out. That happens. The nausea, that happens. But if there's any real fear that I'm working through right now, it's her white blood cell count, her ability to fight infection. And it's not even that. That's actually a side effect, but it's so bad. So I don't know the ranges. She told me the range of normal is 6 to 7, whatever that means. Your white blood cell count should be between 6 and 7. And hers is 0.6, which means that right now, if she's around anybody, even a head cold will kill her. A foodborne illness, if she eats something she doesn't agree with, if she gets an infection of any kind, from anywhere, that she will die. And that, I'm so scared of that. I'm so scared. I really am. I'm fighting fear in that area. So when we were talking yesterday, she was sharing some thoughts with me. She just, she cried and she's like, oh, I was reading my Bible. And I said to her, Mom, I said, I am so sorry that you are going through this. I said, I know none of this is easy. I said, I'm so sorry that this is, how life turned out for you. I'm so sorry, Mama. You deserve better than this. And I didn't cry. I was just trying to be calm. Because she was crying. And so she said, and I was texting to myself while she was talking because I didn't want to miss a word of what she was saying and what she's going through. And so she said that she was reading in the book of John, chapter 15, verse 3, 1 through 11. And she said she was just kind of like reading in her devotions. And all of a sudden, and she had been saying to the Lord, you know, I have this cancer, Lord, and I need help, and my body is riddled with cancer. And so as she was reading, in the book of John 15, she was really shocked because she said her eyes fell on this scripture that said, you are already clean through the word which I have spoken to you. And she said it really ministered to her heart. So she kept reading. And as she was reading, she came across John 15:7 that says, if you remain in me, and my words remain in you, you will ask whatever you desire, and it shall be done for you. And she said she just felt led to write down all her desires. And it was health. And I just noticed that she was like telling me her desires. She's like, oh, you know, my family. None of the desires were for herself. They were all for other people. They were for the church and people in the church and her brothers and sisters and her mom and my brother and my dad and me. And she's like, and I added you on the list because that's how she is. And then she, and then she, and then she said she came across, so she was like looking up the word abide. What does it mean to abide? And she was kind of on this little rabbit trail. And the research she was doing on the word abide led her to Jeremiah 43:1. But instead of going to Jeremiah 43:1, she accidentally, without realizing it, she like mixed up the numbers in her head. She didn't go to Jeremiah 43:1. She went to Jeremiah 33:6. I will bring health and healing. I will heal to them, and I will heal them, and I will reveal the abundance of peace and truth. And she just felt it was such a, when it was random, it was like, you know, an accident. She felt like that was such a confirmation though to her spirit about what she had just read, and she just felt so comforted by that. And I just listened. And then she was talking about, I texted myself because I just didn't want to miss a word, you know. And I don't, if something ever happened to her, I feel like I'm hanging on every word she says, especially about her journey and her walk with the Lord. Because I might not always have this wisdom from her. And I feel like I have to write everything down in case she dies. And I need advice and I can't ask her. I, I, I can't imagine life without my mom. I can't. I'm so afraid to miss anything she says. I'm trying to document it all. And I keep thinking to myself, you idiot, why didn't you listen when your mom was talking? Why did you roll your eyes when she would share from the Word of God? You're gonna need this one day when she's gone. And you have no one to talk to. So yesterday, when she called, she's like, Alicia, all my hair is falling out. And she said, I need to get to the like the wig place right away. And it's far away from her house, like a 45-minute ride and like a 25-minute ride for me. So she's like, "Can you come with me? Maybe you could come help me pick out wigs or we could try them on." And I was like, "Oh, Mom, remember I had those plans. I'm supposed to go down to White Plains and I'm supposed to spend the day with our friends." And she was like, "Oh, of course. It's going to be so fun." She's like, "Dad and I are going to go up and just look around." I just came in the house and I just broke down into tears and I said to my husband, I have to tell you that my heart hurts because I want to go with my mom, but you made these plans." And he was like, "Alicia, it's not even a question. Cancel it, cancel the whole thing." And I know he was disappointed. He put so much thought into it. I know he was disappointed. And I felt horrible. So I got dressed and I got in the car and I went up to the wig place with my mom. And it was so ghetto. It was like it was like a wig shop in Haiti. It was so bad. It was filthy. Somebody recommended it to us. Someone we trust, like a hair person. That's where they get their wigs and they have human hair wigs there. And I just saw it so differently in my mind's eye. I thought it was going to be like this bittersweet kind of day where we maybe both try wigs on and take pictures of ourselves. But we're in these days of COVID and you couldn't try anything on. And my mom, you could only try the synthetic ones on and you could only try 3 on the whole time. You had to keep buying new wig caps. It was like ridiculous. It smelled and it was so dirty. Like the floor was cracked. There was boxes everywhere. It was disgusting. The chair, you couldn't even sit in the chairs. They had these chairs in front of the mirrors, and both chairs were metal that the chairs were on were clearly snapped in half, and the chairs were tipped over to the side. And I was like, "Mom, don't even sit in those." She's like, "I'm not even putting my purse down." So we like clutched our items. Anyway, we spent like an hour and a half just hemming and hawing, talking about wigs, looking at styles. She tried one wig on. She looked like a clown. It was a synthetic wig, but we tried to find like which synthetic wig would be the equivalent of these human hair wigs that we can't try on. We touched everything. We felt the hair and we talked about, could the hairdresser cut it to her style? And Mom, what kind of wig do you want? And I was like, "Do you want a shorter wig?" She's like, "No, I want my long hair." We left with nothing. And they were expensive. They were like $300, which was not an issue, actually. And she was like, "Mom," she's like, "Alicia, I have a prescription from the doctor to get a wig." She's like, "Do you think this place takes a prescription?" And I was like, "I think this place is a cash only establishment, Mom." Anyway, so ghetto. They all just couldn't be bothered. Just like no customer service, like just whatever. And so she tried that one wig on. The skull cap that you had to put on was super tight on her head. Her scalp is really sensitive. Strands of her hair were falling out as we were standing there. She had her hair all done up. I was really afraid. I was so afraid of what she was going to look like when I saw her. Because I hadn't seen her in a couple days, and she said a bunch of hair fell out, but it looked okay. She looked kind of like herself still. It was still there, but in the back she actually had kind of a bald patch. But she looked overwhelmed. She did. She looked childlike at the wig store. And I really had to just take charge. And I was like, "Mom, what about this? And look at this. And oh, you could do that with your hair." And she was like, just kind of looking around like, and she just couldn't like collect her thoughts. It was horrible, actually. I had this flashback to this time. Lots of times, actually, when I was a kid, like a teenager. And I would have an event, a school event where I needed a fancy dress. Our school didn't do a prom because you couldn't do dancing. We would do a senior banquet. We would get dressed up just like a prom, though. And I remember this one year, it was my senior banquet. I was a senior, graduating senior. and I could not find a dress. We couldn't agree on one, and we went from store to store. We went to prom dress stores, and we went to Macy's, and we went to JCPenney. And my mother was always a horrible one to go shopping with because I would be in the dressing room trying on a ton of outfits, like any girl would do. Outfits, clothes, all kinds of clothes and dresses. And I would want my mom's opinion. I would step out of the dressing room, and she would be asleep on the bench, sitting upright. She'd be like this. That's how she sleeps to this day, actually, sitting up on a couch with her mouth open. Sometimes I take pictures of her and text them to her. And I'd be like, Mom! Ah! The little brat, I get it now. I hate going to the mall, and I never want to go with my kids, and they want to try outfits on, and I'm the one asleep on the bench. I'm trying not to be anyway. And, you know, as we stood in the wig store, and I really just had to make this happen. I just had to advance the day because she was just stunned. It looked like she looked stunned, but just the ghetto-ness, the choices, the lace front and the track and the deep front and just all these different types of wigs. And all the hair wigs looked very Asian or Mexican or black. Like they were super dark, really straight and glossy, and just not her at all, which you could dye them and stuff. But anyway, she had a hard time envisioning it. So when I was a senior, I couldn't find anything to wear. And I remember my mom and I decided that we would go buy a pattern and bring it to a seamstress. And I would get fitted. And it was a lovely day. And I had a handmade dress for I don't even know what she would have paid for it. I don't even know, and I didn't care back then. I didn't care. I was 17. And the dress was very beautiful. It was off the shoulder. And I had this teal. I loved teal. And I had this teal piece that went across the front and around the back. It was like a shimmery teal chiffon, and then the rest of the dress was really fitted, kind of like a mermaid dress, super fitted to my body, and it was made out of a black velvet. And my mom just texted me actually because, well, I'll tell you about the dress. Oh, that's her calling me now. Later the same day. So I don't even know what I was talking about. I went to church, and now I'm back. Same day, though. Oh, I know. While I was in the middle of talking about my fabric for my senior banquet, my mom called. Let me tell you about that. But first, let me finish my story about the senior banquet. I feel better now, actually. I went to church. I was really, worked up. But I don't know why Sundays are so hard. I don't know why. But what I was going to say earlier, what I was trying to say, is that I had this really pretty dress that my mom had made for me, right? With the teal shimmer piece across the front with a little, bow piece here, and it was really svelte. And I was struck in the wig shop. I was really struck by how my mom and I were traveling through the wig shop and wandering around and whatever, and trying to try stuff on, but talking about things. And just the parallel of how those roles have been reversed now. Now I'm the one that wants to fall asleep. I just didn't want to be there at all, actually. She was such a good mom to me, to take me to the store, to buy me shoes, to buy me clothes, and indulge me while I would try on outfits all day and then complain about everything. And I was such a complainer, whiner type of kid. I always had something to say. And it wasn't usually positive. It's just God, why is it like that? Why can't you just And my mother was usually ever indulgent. She's kind of an enabler. in that way. But it was hard. And I remember it was like this, I almost got like a book idea because I like to write books. And it was almost like this idea of, I just like parallel universe flashbacks sideways where my mom, I could like see outside of my body. My mom and I were talking about the fabrics of my dress. And I remember we were like reading through the pattern and we're talking to the seamstress and she's like, oh, you could use this fabric. And we were like feeling the fabrics. And I was like, I chose the shimmery one on the top and then the velvet. It was like a stretchy velvet on the bottom. But we had to like feel through a bunch of fabrics, like just like, oh, that feels now that fabric would go good with that, and you could wear that on the top and that on the bottom. And how yesterday we were doing that with chemo scarves for her head. So we were at the hair place and they had all these scarves and we were touching them like, oh, that one's silky. Oh, that one feels like more like a t-shirt. And, oh, that one has some, stretch to it. Or this one's longer and you could like tie it over here. Or here's this shorter one that you would maybe tie in the back. And I just had this flash in that moment to that day when we were touching fabrics for my ball gown for the senior banquet at my school. And that memory burned. It ached inside my heart so badly. I was like, ow. Because it just came rushing back to me that day. We went shopping for shoes and I really had a vision of what I wanted to look like. And my mother is the kind of mother, always has been, always, that even to the point of being wrong or enabling somebody in their dysfunction, especially when it comes to her kids, she wants you to have your dream come true. She just does. And she's willing to move mountains to make that happen. And she didn't have that growing up. So my mom, as a mother, was very protective in a lot of ways, actually. Some probably not so good, but protective of making my dreams come true. And if I wanted something, and not even, maybe I was spoiled emotionally speaking. I didn't grow up rich or anything, actually poor. But if there was anything my mother could do, my mother used to sew my clothes for me because I wanted something and we couldn't afford it. My mother would repurpose old furniture to help me rearrange my room and get a fresh look. Just whatever I wanted. And I wanted that beautiful gown. And we couldn't find one that met my vision, so she had it made for me. And I know that had to be a financial sacrifice for her. And just the irony of, I don't know if it's irony, but whatever. Just the difference in the fabric, the whole fabric thing, touching, it just struck me as we were touching the fabric of the scarves. And I remembered touching that day we were in Hudson. We had driven 45 minutes out of the town to go touch all these fabrics. And how kind she was to make that dream come true for me. And here I am, helping her make a decision about cancer scarves. So as I was saying all of this morning earlier, she called on the phone. And it wasn't good news. Same crap, different day. But then, in the course of conversation, she said, oh, more of my hair fell out, just by the by, right? She's like, more of my hair fell out. She said, I texted you a picture of what I found this morning. So, when I lived in Utah, I went on a field trip with one of my kids to this Mormon pioneer museum. The Mormon culture is really big on their pioneerism. They left New York. They started actually in New York, and they went to like Illinois, and then they went whatever. They migrated west into Utah so they could be alone and practice their polygamy stuff. But I never forgot at this Mormon museum, they had like frozen in time all these things of early days of Mormonism when they came out here in the West. They pioneered the West, and they had, you know, like the old fashioned oven and the old rocker that, you know, Sally Mae Farr sat in when she would knit at night with 55 children around her and other sister wives her husband was sleeping with. But I'll never forget, there was this section in there of artwork made with dun, 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 human hair. First of all, it was morbidly fascinating. I mean, you could Google it. It was elaborate. It was, I never forgot it. It was like rose petals and bouquets of flowers. It was all with human hair. It was crazy. I couldn't believe it. It was strands. They like sewed it and they entwined it. And it was like blonde hair and brown hair and black hair and red hair. And it was elaborate and it was macabre. It was interesting, but I never forgot it. So I had said to my mom, like yesterday at the wig shop, I had said to my mom, don't throw your hair away. I said, I want to save it. And I said, put it all in a bag for me. I said, because I'm going to find somebody who can make artwork with human hair. And I said, we're going to make you a bouquet of your cancer hair. And I said, someday when this is all over, we're going to have this beautiful artwork. It almost looks like needlepoint embroidery. It's really interesting. But anyway, I said, we're going to have this beautiful picture made of your hair. And I said, we are going to look back on this and we are going to look at that picture and we are going to remember that we made it through this dark valley. I said, and that's going to be our trophy, that we made it. And we're going to remember God's goodness when we look at your hair in this creepy, interesting conversation piece. And we kind of had a good laugh about it. And she's like, Dad will never go for that. So this morning, right as I was getting ready for church, she called and she said, oh, I sent you a picture of my hair. So I got the picture and it was just, oh my goodness, it was a lot. It was a lot of hair. And she had like arranged it really neatly in like a little long tuft of hair. It was a lot. And it was a little shocking actually how much it was. And so she just said, she kind of whispered in the phone and she's like, Dad left the room. And she said, and now I can talk about it, but Dad doesn't want me to save any of my hair. She's like, Dad's really creeped out, which is like my dad. But and I said, and I think we all know it's not that my dad is creeped out, although maybe he is on some level, but I can't imagine what pain, how much that must hurt to see your loved one, see parts of their body just fall away, and to know that they are dying if they don't live through this. And we both knew that. I mean, it was kind of like an unspoken thing. So she's like, hey, Dad left the room, but I want you to know I saved my hair for you. And I'm putting it in a bag for you. And she said, I don't want to wash my hair. She said, Alicia, so much of it's falling out. She said, I wanted to wash my hair today, but I couldn't because, she's like, I'm afraid. And I said, Mom, first of all, you're only washing your hair out of routine. I feel like I have to be kind of this voice of reason, matter of fact, even though I hang up the phone and I collapse into tears. But I need to be strong for her because she needs an anchor. And my dad is trying, but he is hurting and he can't be the kind of anchor she needs. He's got his own anchoring he's doing with her, but it's not the same. She needs She needs me to be an anchor to her. And so I cry my tears in private, and I settle up in my soul so that when I talk to her, I can provide that. I just, your own mother. I just can provide that voice to kind of let her bounce her thoughts off of like a sounding board type of thing. So I was like, Mom, you don't need to wash your hair. My mom needs to wash her hair every day. It's like a baby boomer thing. She needs to wash her hair every day. Even though her hair is naturally kind of dry and frizzy. So help me God, she'll wash her hair every day. Even though she has a kind of hair that shouldn't be washed every day. So I said, Mom, really, you're just washing your hair out of routine. And I said, the fact is, Mom, you don't need to wash your hair. I said, just gonna dry it out. And she was like, I am trying to wash those chemicals off my skin. She's like, they're killing my hair. And I just said, Mom, you can't wash the chemo off, Mom. It's coming from underneath. She's like, I can feel it. I can feel my scalp she's like, I can feel the toxins in my scalp. I just want to get them off. And I said, Mom, you can't. They're in you. And she just kind of paused and she was like, yeah, I know. I said, don't wash your hair, Mom. I just kind of like, felt like I had to lead her because it's just like, you don't know what to do. You don't know what to think. And even the dumbest everyday decision is like, now it's monumental. If I touch my head, my hair just falls out into my food. And so I'm like, Mom, I said, here's what you can do. I said, you're just going to loosely braid your hair. I said, don't even run your fingers through it. I said, just divide it into 3 sections. Just braid it really gently. I said, and leave it alone. I said, you're not going anywhere. Her blood cell count is way down, her white blood cells. I said, Mom, you're not going anywhere. No one's going to see you. She was like, yeah, I can do that. I was like, just an easy little braid, Mom. She's like, yeah. And she just started to cry on the phone because it wasn't even about her own self. She was crying for my dad. Because she said, Alicia, she said, I think watching someone go through this is harder than going through it yourself. I was like, I don't know because I'm not going through it. I said, but Mom, it's very distressing to watch somebody walk through this dark valley because it's a helpless feeling. You can't help. Live or die, my mom is on this journey alone. And what I mean is that you get this isolated sense of yourself. We all have that alone self. That's why we want to be alone. We have this internal life that nobody but God knows about, with our deepest inner thoughts and feelings that we don't always verbalize. I'm not sitting here feeling the chemo for her. I see her hair falling out, but it's not my hair. She has to reconcile all of that inside of herself. And it's a helpless, horrible feeling to think that I can't do anything to help her. And I know that my dad, he's been acting really squeamish about my mom's hair. Like, he doesn't want to see it, he doesn't want to touch it. After it falls out, and I asked her to bag it up. And we were kind of like laughing, like, oh, Dad, he's so, whatever. But I know why he doesn't want to see it. It hurts too much. I think he would break. I think he's barely holding it together. I feel so badly for him because he is a fighter. He's a protector. He desperately and very deeply loves my mother. That's been his girl and all he's known. It's always been the two of them together. But at the same time, she feels very alone that her hair is falling out, and my dad just can't be part of that journey with her. He can't. It's just he doesn't have the strength in him, and I know that. So I'm there. I can do that. Anyway, my mom has cancer, but Jesus has the answer.